Hi everyone, I just took my 2020 Ninja 1000SX out for its first run this weekend. I have just completed the break-in period and I've learnt a number of things with this bike that hasn't been mentioned on either the specs or on the press releases that I've thought might be of interest to you. I've taken note of many aspects on this bike. I'll skip what's common knowledge or has already been included in press reviews and will include different information that may be of interest. For instance, I can tell you that the horn beeps in the note of G4. And the blinker flash cycle is roughly 2/3 of a second, giving you around 15 flashes for every second. This may not be critical for riding, but if you plan to use this bike in a light and music show, it's invaluable information that has not yet been reported on. Okay, before you think I'm a kangaroo short of a scrub, please note that I have come from a VFR background. I have very little experience riding Ninjas. I've only ever ridden twice before, both of them demo bikes, and the last of these was 6 months ago. So this review will be from the perspective of a VFR rider's experience changing across. Apologies in advance for the audio and video. This is only the second review I've ever recorded. The first done just 2 days ago with my iPhone, so I'm really no expert. I hope the information is of help and the video is entertaining enough for you. I'm going to be very critical of this bike. This isn't to put the bike down, but what might be a non-issue to one may be a big issue to another, and I have no idea what is relevant to you, so I'll just mention all my thoughts unfiltered and let each viewer decide what is and isn't relevant for themselves. Also, being completely transparent about my thoughts, this bike was a reluctant purchase. I didn't actually want a Ninja. What I really wanted was Generation 9 non-VTEC VFR 1000 with independent brakes, not linked as the VFR currently is. My hand has been forced by my wife, who said that I need to upgrade because my current VFR has no ABS or traction control, and since our daughter is old enough and comes riding now, she wants more safety. For the last 18 months, I have been searching for a suitable replacement, and if being honest, part procrastinating, hoping that Honda would reveal something amazing. But of course, this never happened. During that time, I did do my homework, and even though the two bikes are different in many areas, the Ninja appeared to be the closest bike to my style of riding. I'm now out of options, so I pre-purchased before they even hit the shelves to keep all happy at home. So I have had low expectations on how much I would appreciate this bike because the VFR fit my style of riding perfectly. The way it cornered, the way I sit forward on the seat, not too far forward like a sports bike, but not too upright. It fit me like a glove. To be fair, I think I moulded to it, and it was the only road bike I have ever ridden, but it was a perfect fit. So as a heads up, my review on the Ninja will be very biased from this perspective. This weekend was the first weekend with my bike, and the following are my thoughts and reviews moving from a VFR 800 to the Ninja 1000 SX. The first thing that I noticed is that I really missed the centre stand. Checking the oil was a breeze with the VFR, and having to move the bike a couple of times to get the valves in the right place was also a pain. I guess I'll get used to it. Kawasaki have a great screen. If a centre stand isn't an option, it would at least have been nice to have had a factory accessory option for tyre pressure sensors that fed directly to that screen like Triumph do. Maybe this could be a thought for a newer model. I purchased the heated grips. These are nice looking and are simple to operate, but I'm not convinced they're worth 3 times as much as the aftermarket units. At the end of the day, they don't integrate with the bike in any such way, such as an indicator on the TFT screen. They're just a completely separate unit. I think it's great that Kawasaki have made dedicated connectors for it, but I dare say that this connector, which is just bullet plugs, could be used for any aftermarket grips. Whilst on the screen integration, the screen does pair with mobile phones for the Rideology app, which has been mentioned elsewhere, but I feel that Kawasaki missed the opportunity to have it integrate with more such as turn-by-turn directions with a GPS app. I notice that the gear selector is spongy when I push it down with my feet if I'm already in first. I'm guessing that this has something to do with the quick shifter and how it operates. I've never owned a bike with one of these, so it's probably not an issue and I'll probably get used to it. But while on the topic of a quick shifter, please note that it is turned off by default on this bike. It will need to be engaged by the rider in the menu, which cannot be done while riding. I've left it off for now because I've chosen to ride the bike more sedately during the break-in period. What I didn't appreciate was that you can't change the mode while riding. If I'm riding and I hit a storm, it'd be nice to keep riding with the protection of the fairings without having to stop and switch to rain mode and get wet. Maybe there is a way of doing it, but I haven't found it. For what it's worth, I've had it on rain mode all weekend to keep myself from getting overexcited in case I had a rush of blood while still braking in the engine. I mentioned yesterday that I could feel a buzz while riding it at home. Unfortunately, this weekend I noticed that buzz feeds through to the rearview mirrors. Travelling at 100 kilometres an hour, 60 miles, everything is a blur in the rearview. It's quite difficult to see if the car behind you has lights on top and is a cop. I'm not sure if this is a standard and expected for straight 4 engines, but it's definitely something that I noticed. If I slip in the clutch, everything goes clear in the rearview mirrors, so I know that it's not the road surface, it's definitely the engine. At 80 kilometers an hour, it's much better. It seems to be around about that high 3000 RPM mark that it comes into play. I had a play with Rideology. I don't appreciate that Rideology keeps telling me to stop riding in order to use it. I was stopped and I was off the bike and the engine was not running and it still wasn't happy. It turns out that the bike must be in neutral in order to start and stop the app. Since I always park in gear, I found this a nuisance. Surely it wouldn't have been difficult to detect if the engine is running or not. After all, the headlights do. A couple of times I found myself knocking on the high beam with my index finger. I didn't realise it had been done until I looked down at the dash and saw that the high beam light was on. So I'm not sure how long I was running with it and blinding people. I'm not sure if earlier Ninjas are the same or not, but the high beam is initiated by your index finger by pushing the flash switch forward. I'm guessing that I've done it when I've gone for the clutch. I'll have to keep an eye on it. I did it twice on Saturday, but I didn't do it any time on Sunday, so maybe it's not a big issue. The VFR is a very forgiving bike. Just last weekend, I went through a patch of roadwork gravel I missed seeing, and the bike slipped sideways. But it was completely stable the whole time, or it felt that way. It slipped enough that it cleared a full line of stones through the middle of the patch. I haven't had that situation to compare with the Ninja so far, thankfully, and I'm not going to deliberately put myself in that situation, but I can say that I did come into a corner a little hotter than I was meant to, and on the VFR I would have had some real work to do with the brakes and tuning. But on the Ninja it was so much easier to correct my mistake. That was really nice. Additionally, I have found the braking is so much more effective on the Ninja too. I'm very pleased with it. The VFR comes across a little heavier, and the Ninja in the braking seems a lot lighter. It's definitely an upgrade for me there. To be honest, after riding for a bit and getting used to the bike, I have been very pleasantly surprised by the Ninja's handling. My initial concerns about it not behaving as nicely as the VFR have been unwarranted. The 1000SX handles like a well-trained sheepdog. It just seems to know what you need and does it without instructions. Well, almost. The steering is noticeably lighter than the VFR, but not twitchy like some other bikes I have ridden. It still gives me great tactile feedback and still feels as though it wants to sit there in the corners just as nicely as the VFR, but much lighter if I need to change my line. I'm going to be very interested to hear reviews from old Ninja owners who have upgraded to see whether or not they have noticed an improvement with the handling too, or whether it just handles the same as previous Ninjas. I know that a 55 size tyre on the back used to be used to improve the handling previously, but the latest model has a rake. For me, I don't see a need to change from the factory tyres at this stage. I'm very happy with the setup. Now, I haven't had the chance to actually set up my suspension correctly for my weight and my riding style yet, but even at the factory standard, this thing is impressive, and I'm happy with the bike as it is. The pegs feel like they naturally put my boots out of the way a little better than what the VFR did, and feel a little bit higher too, but less crouched. On some of the corners I'm familiar with, I feel like I would have been scraping pegs on the VFR this weekend, but with the Ninja I still had some clearance. I don't know if I was cornering at exactly the same angle, because there's no way of measuring on a VFR, but I actually hit 49 degrees this weekend without trying hard to corner. The bike just naturally has lulled me into confidence as I've ridden it more, and I've just found myself there. It's the same as the VFR does, and on this I'm extremely happy with. As for the scraping of the pegs, I don't intentionally try to do it, but I do end up getting quite over because of the line that I choose to ride. I don't ride apex or racetrack type lines, but rather I ride conservative lines which are in wide and out tight, as mentioned in the Police Rider's Handbook. This naturally has me leaning a lot more through a corner at the slow point before straightening up and speeding up. So it's not like I was taking racetrack lines and doing this at high speed. It happens more at low speed. The windscreen I found very nice, and coming from a VFR, which admittedly was shocking with buffeting, I found that having the windscreen all the way down, I had very clean and smooth air. Putting it up to its highest point seemed to offer protection for my torso, but not my helmet, and gave a little bit more buffeting. I'm 6'2" in size. The seat feels more comfortable than with the VFR, and has a very firm back, if I can phrase it that way, whereas the VFR seems to slope, and was uncomfortable when I had my young daughter sitting as pillion, which was putting pressure on the lower part of my back and making it a bit sore. I haven't ridden with my daughter yet on the Ninja, but I feel that because of the seat it will be different and more comfortable. Now, the low speed handling I found to be brilliant, and I cannot express this enough. When I test rode the 2019 model, on both times I did not feel stable at low speed. It was an unfamiliar bike, but it also just didn't seem to handle well. With the 2020 Ninja, I never had that feeling at all. It handles brilliantly and better than what the VFR does. Additionally, the throttle control is silky smooth. Coming from the VFR, when trying to ride at low speeds, say 30 to 40 kilometers an hour, I found it jerky. Even going from acceleration to backing off on the throttle and then back up again, you could notice this little bit of a jerk. I am not noticing this with the Ninja. I cannot express how impressed I am with both the low handling control and the smoothness of the throttle. Kawasaki have done an incredible job there. At this point, I would like to mention that I'm thankful to Honda for not continuing the VFR line. As already mentioned, I was a reluctant team switcher. I love my VFR, and if they had released a new model, even if it was still at 800 with good electronics, I would have jumped at it to keep my wife happy, and I would have missed what I'm experiencing now. My fears were definitely unfounded, and just with 2 days of riding on this bike, I'm already quite optimistic that I'm going to enjoy this more than what I have the VFR. Lastly, I'm also surprised by the range. For both days, it's been indicating as though I would get roughly 400 kilometers out of the tank. The last day I've pulled up in my garage, I had 320 kilometers on the clock, and it just started flashing red, telling me I still had 70 kilometers left to go. Today's riding was actually through a lot of wind as well, and probably a little bit more spirited than yesterday, so I'd say that 350 k's would be a conservative estimate for general riding and a bit of touring. That's about all I have to say at this point. I apologise to those who are older Ninja owners if you are looking for more of a comparison between older generations and this one. I'm hoping some old Ninja owners will come out with a review soon. I'm really not able to comment on that because of the lack of my experience. But for those who are VFR riders and are looking for a new bike, this is definitely one to check out. Thanks for watching.